I never thought I'd be dealing with this kind of situation at 25, especially after being with someone for 4 years. My girlfriend and I started dating when we were in college. We met during our first year and soon became close. Last December, we got engaged and I really believed we had something special. I mean, every relationship has its ups and downs, but I thought we were solid. Things started getting weird in February. She began talking more about this guy from her high school. Let's call him Alex. I knew about him already since she'd mentioned him a few times before. He was someone she used to like back then, before we met. I even met him once at a birthday party and didn't think much of it. At first, I wasn't worried about them talking. She'd show me some of their chats, laugh about something he said, and I thought it was just old friends catching up. I'm not the jealous type, so I didn't make a big deal out of it. But then things started changing. She would bring him up in random conversations. We'd be talking about what movie to watch, and she'd say something like, "Oh, Alex watched this one last week. He said it's good." It felt forced, like she was trying to make him part of our daily life. I noticed she was on her phone more often, especially when we were together. That wasn't like her at all. Usually, she'd leave her phone in another room when we were spending time together, but now she was always texting. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd get defensive and just say friends. One evening, she suggested we watch this new series on Netflix. We started it, and I actually got into it. A few days later, I saw her phone on the couch while she was in the kitchen. I looked at it and found out Alex had recommended that show to her. She hadn't mentioned that part. It might seem small, but it bothered me. We were doing something I thought was our thing, but it was actually coming from him. I scrolled through more messages and found she was sending him selfies, pictures of her outfits, and even photos of us together. There was this picture of us making dinner. I didn't even know she took it. She sent it to him saying, "Look how cute we are." That hurt. Our private moments weren't just ours anymore. The more I looked, the worse it got. She was texting him during work hours, sending him updates about her day, sharing inside jokes. She had started putting her phone on silent mode when we were together, saying she wanted no distractions. But I knew it was because she didn't want me to see his notifications. What really got to me was how she'd changed over the past few months. She started trying new hobbies that she'd never shown interest in before. One day, she suddenly wanted to learn photography because Alex was into it. Another time she started talking about hiking, something she'd always said wasn't her thing, but Alex apparently loved outdoor activities. Then one night, she went to bed early because of work the next day. I was sitting alone, feeling uneasy about everything. The past few months kept playing in my mind, all the little changes, the secret smiles at her phone, the way she turned her screen away when I walked past. I knew I shouldn't, but I checked her phone again. That's when I saw the message from Alex that said, "It's your move now." She hadn't shut him down or told him to back off. Instead, she replied, "I need time to think about this." She even took a screenshot of his message and sent it to her best friend asking, "What should I do?" I sat there, holding her phone, feeling like someone had punched me in the gut. 4 years together, endless talks about our future, planning a wedding, and here she was, actually considering throwing it all away. I get that people can sometimes have moments of doubt or wonder, what if about someone from their past? But this was different. She was actively talking to him, sharing our life with him, like he was some backup plan. I thought about all the signs I'd ignored. The way she'd started going out more with friends, but being vague about who she was meeting. How she'd gotten so protective of her phone when she used to leave it lying around without a care. The new passwords on her social media accounts. I brushed it all off because I didn't want to be that suspicious boyfriend who checks up on everything. The next morning, I could barely look at her. She was acting normal, offering to make coffee, asking about my plans for the day, but everything felt wrong. I spent the whole day at work just replaying those messages in my head, thinking about every recent moment we'd shared, wondering if any of it was real or if she'd been thinking about him the whole time. Was I just a placeholder until something better came along? Had the last 4 years meant anything to her at all? I spent the next few days at my brother's place. I needed space to think, to figure out what to do next. My brother didn't ask too many questions, just gave me a place to stay and let me process everything. I kept checking my phone, not sure if I wanted her to message me or not. During those days away, I started noticing things I'd overlooked before, like how she depended on me for almost everything. I'd been paying most of our rent because she was still finding her career path. I'd helped her get a car, though it was in my name since her credit wasn't good enough. I'd even been covering most of our daily expenses, from groceries to utilities. When I went back to our apartment to talk, she was waiting. She looked worried, probably because she knew something was wrong. I sat down and told her straight up that I knew about her messages with Alex. She tried to play it cool at first, saying they were just friends catching up. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I'd seen everything, the selfies, the constant texting, how she'd been sharing our private moments with him. When I mentioned his, "It's your move" message, she went quiet. She just sat there, looking at her hands, not saying anything. Finally, she admitted that maybe things had gone too far. She said she got caught up in the attention, that she didn't mean for it to happen. But something in her voice told me there was more she wasn't saying. I pushed harder, asking if she'd met him in person. She nodded slowly, still not looking at me. "Just for coffee," she said, like that made it better. I asked her if anything happened between them. Her pause before answering told me everything I needed to know. "It just happened once," she said quietly. I felt like someone had dumped cold water on me. Here I was, thinking we could maybe work through the emotional stuff, the texting, the secrets. But she'd actually cheated on me. She tried to downplay it, saying it was a mistake, that she got caught up in the moment. I asked her why she would do this when we were planning our wedding. Her answer made me even angrier. She said she felt lost, that talking to Alex made her feel like her old self again. She kept saying she never meant to hurt me, that she didn't think it would go this far. Looking at her sitting there, making excuses, I realized something. She wasn't sorry she did it. She was sorry she got caught. If I hadn't found those messages, she would have kept lying to my face, acting like everything was fine. I asked her if she even cared about our relationship anymore. She didn't have a real answer, just kept saying she was confused and made a mistake. But cheating isn't a mistake. Forgetting to pay a bill is a mistake. Going behind your partner's back, meeting someone else, letting things get physical, those are choices. I stood up and told her I needed some real time away. Not just a few days, but real space to figure things out. She started crying, saying she would do anything to fix this. But her tears didn't mean much to me anymore. Not when I knew she'd been lying this whole time. While I was packing some clothes, she kept following me around the apartment. She said she would cut off all contact with Alex, that we could go to counseling, that she would prove herself to me. But I couldn't even look at her. Every time I did, I just saw her sending those messages, sharing our moments with him, meeting him behind my back. As I headed for the door, she called after me, saying she was sorry and that she didn't mean for any of this to happen. I didn't turn around. Her apologies felt empty now. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove back to my brother's place. That night, lying on my brother's couch, I kept thinking about all the signs I'd missed. The way she'd changed her habits, how she'd become more secretive, all those new interests that suddenly appeared. I'd ignored it all because I trusted her. I wanted to believe we were stronger than that. My phone kept buzzing with messages from her, but I couldn't bring myself to read them. What more could she say? No explanation would make this okay. No excuse would erase what she'd done. I turned off my phone and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow I'd have to start figuring out how to untangle our lives. After a week of ignoring her messages and calls, she started showing up at places where she knew I'd be. She came to my brother's house one morning, saying she needed to talk. I knew I had to face her eventually, so I stepped outside. She looked different. Her usual put-together appearance was gone, replaced by someone who looked like they hadn't slept in days. She launched into the same apologies I'd already heard in her messages, saying she'd do anything to fix things, that she realized what huge mistake she'd made. But then she said something that showed her true colors. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she said. That's when it clicked. She wasn't here because she loved me or wanted to fix our relationship. She was here because she was scared of losing her comfortable life. I reminded her how she'd been perfectly fine sneaking around with Alex, lying to my face, and sharing our private moments with him. She tried to argue that those were mistakes, that she got caught up in something that didn't mean anything. But I wasn't buying it anymore. "You should have thought about all this before you started sneaking around," I told her. She started crying, saying she needed my help, that she couldn't handle everything on her own. Then she asked if she could stay with me until she figured things out. That was the final straw. She wasn't sorry for hurting me. She was sorry she got caught and had to face the consequences. I told her she was on her own now. She made her choices, and now she had to deal with them without me as her backup plan. She kept pushing, talking about how she didn't have the money or resources to start over. She listed all the things she couldn't handle alone: the apartment rent, car payments, bills. Each word just proved my point more. She wasn't fighting for our relationship. She was fighting to keep her easy life. Looking at her, I felt nothing but disappointment. This person I'd supported for years, who I thought would be my wife, was showing her true self. She only cared about what she was losing, not who she was losing. I told her straight up, "You're only here because you realized how good you had it. If you really cared about me, you wouldn't have done any of this in the first place." She tried to argue, but we both knew it was true. My brother came out to check on me, and she finally got the message that she wasn't welcome there. Before leaving, she tried one last time, saying she'd do whatever it took to make things right. I just walked back inside. Over the next few days, she kept texting, each message more desperate than the last. She talked about having no place to go, no way to pay for things, no one to help her. But that wasn't my problem anymore. She'd had all those things and threw them away for someone who didn't even want her. I started sorting out the practical stuff. I called my landlord to take my name off the lease. I contacted the car loan company about the vehicle that was in my name. With each call, I felt more weight lifting off my shoulders. I'd been carrying this relationship for so long, making sure everything was taken care of, while she'd been taking it all for granted. She sent messages about not being able to afford the apartment alone, about not knowing what she'd do about transportation. Each message confirmed what I already knew. She'd been using me as her safety net while building a whole other life behind my back. My brother helped me move my stuff out of the apartment when she was at work. Looking at all our shared things, all the memories we'd built, I felt oddly empty. These things that used to mean so much now just reminded me of her lies. As we loaded the last box into my brother's truck, I found a photo of us from our engagement. We looked so happy, so sure about our future together. I left it on the counter. That life was over now, and in a way, I felt relieved. I was done being someone's backup plan. A month passed, and I was starting to feel normal again. I'd moved into a small apartment near my workplace and was focusing on myself. My friends were supportive, especially Jake, who lived in the same building. He'd stop by often, making sure I wasn't sitting alone with my thoughts too much. One evening, Jake came over with some news. He looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure if he should tell me. His wife is friends with someone who knows my ex, and apparently there was more to the story than I knew. Right after we broke up, my ex ran straight to Alex. They spent 2 weeks together, and for a moment, hearing this stung a bit. Even though I was over her, knowing she jumped right into something with a guy she cheated with wasn't easy to hear. But then Jake told me the rest. After those 2 weeks, Alex went right back to his own girlfriend. He'd just been playing around with my ex, treating her like some temporary fun before returning to his real relationship. She thought she was running off to something special, but instead, she got dumped and left alone. I sat there processing this information. Part of me felt a weird sense of satisfaction. Not because I wanted her to be miserable, but because it felt like karma doing its job. She'd thrown away 4 years together, lied repeatedly, and tried to keep me as a backup while she tested things with Alex. Now she was the one who got played. Jake mentioned she'd been asking mutual friends about me, trying to find out if I was seeing anyone or if there was still a chance. But I was done. Finding out about her, and Alex just confirmed that I'd made the right choice cutting her out of my life completely. Later that week, she tried reaching me through a different number. She sent this long message about how Alex had used her, how she realized what huge mistake she'd made, and how much she missed what we had. She said she'd learned her lesson and understood now what she'd thrown away. I read the message but didn't respond. She wasn't sorry for what she'd done. She was sorry it didn't work out the way she planned. If things had gone well with Alex, she wouldn't be trying to contact me at all. My brother invited me over for dinner one night, and we talked about everything. He reminded me how she'd always relied on me for everything: money, stability, emotional support. Even when we first started dating, she'd needed help with basic things like paying bills and keeping her life organized. "You were her safety net," he said, and she took that for granted. He was right. Looking back, there were so many red flags I'd ignored. How she'd never really stood on her own 2 feet. How she always needed someone to lean on. How she'd use guilt to keep me helping her with everything. The funny thing was, I wasn't even angry anymore. I felt relieved. The constant stress of carrying someone else's life was gone. I didn't have to worry about being lied to or wonder if I was being used. My friends started inviting me out more, and I began enjoying life again. I joined a local sports league, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was with her. I was meeting new people, making new friends, and realizing how much of myself I put on hold while taking care of her. One day, I ran into her best friend at the grocery store. She tried to avoid me, but I caught her eye. She looked guilty, probably because she'd known about everything and never said anything. She started to say something about how my ex was struggling, but I just walked away. Their drama wasn't my problem anymore. That night, thinking about the encounter, I realized how much I'd grown. A few months ago, hearing about my ex struggling would have made me feel guilty, maybe even tempted to help. But now I understood that wasn't my responsibility anymore. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with them. 6 months after everything happened, my life had completely changed. I got a promotion at work, made new friends, and even started dating again. Nothing serious, just casual meetings to remind myself that not everyone is dishonest. Through mutual friends, I heard different stories about my ex. She'd moved back in with her parents, which must have been hard for her since she always talked about how controlling they were. She lost her job at the cafe because she kept showing up late, and her car got repossessed because she couldn't make the payments. One Saturday morning, while I was having coffee at my favorite local spot, she walked in. She didn't notice me at first, but when she did, she froze. I could see her trying to decide whether to leave or come talk to me. She chose the second option. "Can we talk?" she asked, standing next to my table. She looked different, not just physically, but something about her energy had changed. Gone was the confidence she used to have. She seemed smaller somehow, less sure of herself. I pointed to the chair across from me. I was curious about what she could possibly have to say after all this time. She sat down and started talking about how her life had fallen apart. She'd lost her job, her car, her apartment, basically everything she'd had when we were together. "I really messed up," she said, staring at her hands. "I threw away the best thing in my life for someone who didn't even care about me." She went on about how Alex had just used her, how he'd gone back to his girlfriend like nothing happened, and how she'd been too embarrassed to tell anyone at first. I listened quietly, feeling strangely detached from it all. 6 months ago, this conversation would have torn me apart. Now it was like watching a movie about someone else's life. She told me she'd started therapy, trying to understand why she did what she did. She talked about her fear of commitment, her need for validation, and how she'd taken me for granted. All things that would have meant something to me before, but now just sounded like excuses. "I know I don't deserve it," she said, "but I miss you. I miss us. I miss the life we had." She reached across the table like she wanted to touch my hand, but I moved it away. "The life we had wasn't real," I told her. "You were planning your exit while I was planning our future. That's not love, that's convenience." She started crying, but it didn't affect me like it used to. I finished my coffee and stood up. Before leaving, I told her one last thing. "I hope you figure things out, but whatever happens in your life isn't my concern anymore. You made your choice, and I've made mine." Walking out of that coffee shop, I felt the last piece of our story finally fall into place. All those years together, all the plans we made, all the trust I'd given her, it had taught me valuable lessons about self-worth and not letting someone take advantage of my kindness. My brother called later that day, and I told him about the encounter. He asked if I was okay, and for the first time, I could honestly say yes. I was better than okay. I was happy with my life, proud of how far I'd come, and grateful that I'd found out who she really was before we got married. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the hardest things in life lead to the best outcomes. Losing someone I thought was my future forced me to build a better life for myself. I learned to spot red flags, to value honesty above comfort, and to understand that real love doesn't come with constant doubt. Today, I'm thankful for the whole experience. Not because it was easy, but because it showed me what I deserve in a relationship. And more importantly, it taught me that I'd rather be alone than be someone's backup plan or safety net. Life is too short to waste it on people who don't value you as much as you value them. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.